Hi, grade 10s. In this video lesson, I'm going to explain what role mitosis plays in plants and animals. So there's a little bit of information on page 53 of your textbook, but it's not very much, and there's no diagrams or photographs. So that's why I'd rather explain it to you using my PowerPoint. All right, so if you remember in the last little video, we were looking at where mitosis plays a role in the life cycle of organisms like humans. So now we're going to look at what role it plays in this little clip. We'll look at what role it plays in plants. And then in the next clip, we'll look at what role mitosis plays in humans and other vertebrates. All right, so something you may be familiar with, vegetative reproduction. Okay, so I've got these plants in my lab at the back. They're always there, all right? They're called geraniums, or sometimes they're known as pelargoniums. And if you take a little cutting of that plant and you put it in water, preferably with a root hormone that you can buy from a nursery, then, or if you put it into soil, then it will start growing little roots, all right? Now, you're actually making a clone of the original parental plant, and that's simply, because conditions are favorable and mitosis is taking place, and the cells are differentiating to become new leaves and roots and so on of new little cutting, which then grows into a new adult plant. The same with strawberries. Those of you who have got strawberries in your gardens, there's one of the older plants, and then it grows a horizontal, over the ground stolon or runner, it's sometimes called, and then where regions of that touch the ground, then new roots develop and a new little plant. So here you can see the original plant with the runners or stolons and little plants growing, and then roots grow into the ground. Now I've got this in my garden. Some people call it spider plant. This is the variegated one, so it's got partly white and green leaves, but you get the green one as well. I've also got that in my garden. And you can see here, there's quite a few stolons and runners. So this one's actually started making roots already over there. So as it grows, and then as the stolon touches the ground, then the roots grow down and the new plant grows. And eventually, if you've got this in a hanging basket, you can end up with a big plant with lots of little baby plants hanging down the side. And if they break off, I'll break that off now. Got some roots already. I'll just try and hold it up for the camera. There are the roots. All right, and if I put that into water, then they will grow into a new plant. And that's how we end up with ground covers, covering the soil and so on. Another one is this one. This is bryophyllum. Now, it's dormant now because it's winter. But at the edges of these leaves, there's like little spikes. And in summer, you get tiny little plants growing here. And then as they drop to the ground, they develop roots and grow into more plants. That's a clone of the original plant. Vegetative reproduction using mitosis. Lots of succulent plants. Remember, succulent plants are the ones we grow in rockeries. A lot of them are indigenous. They've got these thick, fleshy leaves. So this one as well, I could pop this into some water. Okay, maybe might need a more healthy specimen, but it will grow into a new plant. And that's how, my succulent garden at the back, I had one little flower bed, and then in the beginning of summer, I just took some plants across some little cuttings, and I grew a whole new succulent bed on the other side, simply by vegetative reproduction, mitosis. All right, this one grows at school. It's called the desert rose, and Mr. Warren always talks about he was the one who brought a few of these desert rose succulent plants into the school, and now they grow all over, and the gardens are often thinning them out and planting them elsewhere, and you can see here's the roots. And the thick fleshy leaves would store the water. Okay. All right, now some organisms use mitosis as a form of asexual sexual reproduction. These are bacteria, they're not really red. This has been color enhanced. It's a scanning electron microscope picture. All right, and sorry, I've got it here. Okay, so you can see here that this cell has already divided. So there's two daughter cells there, they're still together. So what's happening there is cell division is occurring, mitosis is occurring, the DNA copies itself, and then you can see the cytoplasm, well, that's already, the DNA is copied and split, and the cells starting to divide, so that you end up with two daughter cells, and then they will each grow into adult cells. And this happens really quickly. Bacterial cells can divide every 20 to 30 minutes, and that's how, just by getting some bacteria in us, someone sneezes all over us, then eventually you might end up with some infection like a sore throat, and very quickly, like in a day, a couple of hours, these bacteria can divide by mitosis, asexual reproduction very quickly. It's also called binary fission because the cell binary is splitting fission into two, binary. So here's amoeba, the unicellular organism that lives in ponds, base of food chains, gets eaten by other smaller animals, not the base, but gets eaten by other small animals in the pond, and it stops moving, draws in its pseudopodia, the nucleus divides, then the cytoplasm divides, and you end up with two daughter cells. All right. Here's another one, yeast. Yeast is a type of fungus. They are unicellular organisms, and they divide also by mitosis, binary fission, but you can see unevenly. So little buds grow off. And those buds develop into new cells, and then they develop a bud, and so on and so on. And the yeast in our bread will use some of the sugars in the bread dough and produce carbon dioxide, which will make our bread rise. Okay? This is one of my favorites. It's called hydra. It's an animal that lives in ponds. It belongs to the same family as sea anemones. So here's the adult hydra. Basically got a body cavity and these little tentacles that can wave about and catch food and push it into the body cavity and digest it. I remember talking about that with lysosomes. All right, so there's at the bottom here, there's the adult organism. The conditions are favorable, enough water, warmth of enough water, and it's nice and warm from the sun, and there's enough food, nutrients for the hydra. Then it starts reproducing asexually by mitosis, and little buds grow off the side, like you can see over here. And then the cells differentiate to become the different layers in that part and the tentacles. And eventually this little bud will drop off and attach to its own water plant or to a rock and grow into an adult hydra, and then the whole process occurs again. But if the conditions become unfavorable, like if it gets colder, more to winter, then these hydras actually reproduce sexually as well. This is for interest, so they make egg and sperm and fertilization and everything occurs. We're not going to talk about that here. All right, in the next little video, I'm going to talk about how mitosis plays a role in plants.